Yeah, but that's a belief system, because what matters there is what are you referring to as me? What is the nature of this me, this I? And so if the nature of this me is, let's say, it's hard to point to it, because you're referring to solipsism. Solipsism? Solipsism, sorry. Um, where there is what the I is real in the way we normally interpret it to be, and then everything is that, and there's nobody there, only I. And that's solipsism. Solipsism, I was saying. That's it's a belief system, and so a lot of the pointing in kind of more contemporary non-duality or spirituality can be confused as that. And often there are probably people who are pointing to that who are actually pointing to solipsism, and don't recognize the true nature. So they haven't really awakened. And so what you're referring to is you're correctly assessing it as problematic, something you wouldn't want, because we shouldn't want that. That's a in Buddhism it would be called a wrong view. And a view is basically a perspective, a paradigm, but it's an intellectual map. There is something close in words could be expressed close to that, but it's very different. It's a world apart, where it doesn't feel isolated, because there is still room for multiplicity. And so there is room for something that is here, that is experiencing differently to something that, for example, you're experiencing. And there is, in a sense, an acknowledgement of that difference, of my universe and your universe. And they're both real and valid, but they're not separate. But the trick has to do with, when everything is me, what is this me? The nature of it. And so it's almost as if we project the false self, the illusory separate self, onto the world, onto everybody, onto everything. And so I think you're appropriately rejecting that view. Yeah, but you're also the one being. Yeah, that's why everything, whenever you define what we are or what I am, you have to, it's tricky, because if you say, well, then we're all aspects of the one being, you're rejecting the opposite statement, which is there is one being and I am that one being. And so when it's expressed in language, you have to say both, even when you're reflecting on it without language. There is still can be a mental paradigm. And so in that paradox of I am this body mind, but I am also the one being that is everything, everywhere. There's a paradox. Then what am I? And in that, let's say, mental short circuit, if you can contemplate both, something can start to happen. You can start to see something beyond what the mind can map. And in a sense, you can start to see from beyond or prior to the mind, without the filter of the mind. You can start to see the filter as a filter. This is what koans are meant to do in Zen. They very specifically create these kind of mental traps or mental short circuits, the paradox of what's the sound of one hand clapping, or what is mu, what was your face before you were born. Yeah, to a point where the mind cannot grasp, the mind cannot map. And you come to an edge where, in a sense, you are posed with a question, what am I really? Because something feels like you are going to end if you keep inquiring. Because we can only identify with the mind. And so when that which is looking starts to look from prior to the mind, that which I thought I am comes to an end. And it could be temporary or a glimpse or a momentary, but the body mind will likely start to get activated with sensations of ending. And not always. Yeah, and for example, this around I am everything, or how did you say it? You said everything is me, I think you said. Yeah, and so this myself, this me, then there you can contemplate, what if that me, that myself, isn't real? Not even that, because then you can start to imagine another thing that you can be, but grander or bigger. So go to the direction of, what if that me, that myself, which you are referring to, isn't real? And by real, I mean it doesn't have an independent nature. And so, well, let me just be more clear about what I mean by real. Because we talk about illusion, illusory and real, but it comes from Sanskrit, and it's a different, the way we're using it here, it's a slightly different language. And so something that is illusory is that its true nature isn't that thing. So let's say you're looking at a ring, a golden ring. And so you would think the ring is real. But I would say that the ring is illusory in this sense, because you melt the gold and the ring is gone. The gold is real, as a metaphor. And so something appears to be like a ring, but it's not real. It's illusory. In that specific sense, it's illusory. Which doesn't mean it's not real in how in the West we think of something that's illusory. Like it's not really there, and it's not, for example, you see a mirage and you think, well, there is no water there. It's actually a reflection of the sky. It's illusory in the Western way. There is no water there really, but because this can be interpreted when it's brought into the West from the Sanskrit, then people think the world isn't real. There's nothing there. But it's illusory in a different sense. It's real. It's just not what it appears to be. Its essence isn't the thing in itself. And so back to when you refer to myself, everything is myself. When I relate to others, I'm only relating to myself. This myself that you're referring to, contemplate the possibility that it's not real. That which you're referring to. Instead of trying to create a map of how that could be grander, vaster, so it's the other way, going towards it to find its empty nature or its illusory nature. And then that paradox will resolve. The premise that myself is real in the way I am. It's hard to say because we have a thought, a creation that's a thought complex, and then that is what we call I. That is what we call me, myself. But it doesn't appear, it doesn't look like to us like it's an assumption or a thought. But it is. Yeah, but we take the mind to be the I. And so when you're saying myself, when you're saying, you're referring to something that's not really what you are. And then that gets projected onto everything. And that's solipsism. So I said solipsism, right? Yeah, okay. I need to.
Syllogism.
Solipsism. Okay. I have my English corrector.
Helper.
Helper. Yeah. No, I really appreciate it. Thank you. And so when you said, well, just trust the process, etc. Yeah, sure, but there is something you can do, which is inquire into the nature of that which you call me.
Yes.
More deeply and more directly. It's what you are is already, and is this here now. And so, in a sense, you can't find it because anything that's looking for that is going to move away from it. But you could do, in a sense, the reverse. Look at what you seem to be, what it appears like you are. And notice the illusory nature of that. For example, notice that it's going to be made of thoughts and sensations. And therefore, the more you see, oh, these are just thoughts and sensations. So thoughts could be images, complex images and sensations in the body. Then you can't be that. Anything else? Yeah, just seeing that. I mean, you're already seeing it, so that's all it takes, because it's the nature of the human mind. And so you're just noticing that, and just notice it, and then you, just by expressing what you express, you're showing where your values are and what you care about. So sure, there's a part of you that wants this and that to gain and achieve and success, and the spiritual materialism aspect of getting something out of the spiritual work. But you see that. You see that, and you see the problem in that. I think just by asking the question. And so that's not something that you can, the more, if you even try to fight that, then it's more of the same. So then that said, the pointer that I would say around that is, keep in mind that what this is really about is what is happening now. And it's to realize that what is happening now is what you're looking for. And I'm speaking slowly because it's hard to say words that feel kind of accurate. But if at any point you can say, what I'm looking for is what's happening right now. And not as a whole other belief system, but as a experiment, a practice, an inquiry. What if? Because then, if it becomes like a belief system, then it won't go too far. But it can be discovered, it can be realized that everything I'm looking for is what's happening now. And I say what's happening now because it's everything that's happening now, whatever is happening whenever you ask. And so if that is what this work is about, then what I can get tomorrow is not it. The ways in which I can grow and develop are not it. That can be valuable as well. But the core of what I'm talking about is, you could say it in many ways, but one way right now in the context of what you're bringing up, I would say, is the realization that what I most deeply want, what I'm looking for the most, is what's happening right now, and nothing else. Everything else is secondary. Yeah, you will experience like this isn't enough. That's the thing to look into. Because I'm not saying I said this is what I want the most, everything else is secondary. But it's also important, valuable. So I can still put energy and allow movement and effort and work towards all of the aspects of life. But from the place where nothing is better than now. Well, if you see it that way, then that's it. Because it is obvious. When this is seen, it is simple and obvious. It's like, of course, there's nothing better than this, because this is the only thing there is. So to want this to be something else is to pull away into a corner of your imagination and fight with what's happening and try to force something that's just not going to budge, which is there's a movement that's natural in life. And that's only going to create suffering. It's absolutely doesn't help in anything, which is different than this is it. And I feel like water, I feel like working, I feel like walking, and it's still this is it. But what you mentioned is a very important key thing, which is, well, no, it doesn't feel like fulfilling. Something's missing. It appears to be not enough. And then that's something that we can look into and see what that is, that experience. And it has the quality of, I know how this should be. I know better. And it's I. And that I is a mental construct.